It's 6:59, just kind of checking everything out. Had one person waiting. They were here and then they were gone. Trying to get the shirt in frame. And so if I lean forward, top of the head goes away. I'm assuming I'll, in the end, get more offline viewers than live viewers. So I'll give it a minute or two and then just start with the not so prepared content that I have. Yeah, I wonder, should I just get going? I think probably. Yeah, 7:01. All right, we will get started. Perhaps live viewers will join. If they don't, that is okay. It'll be a recording. So, first and foremost, why a radio show? I have a lot of ideas. Um, I want to get them out there. We've got a community at Block Apps that are often excited about things that are going on. We've tried different channels. We got a bunch of people in the Telegram group, lots of Twitter followers, lots of LinkedIn, etc. I still haven't found quite the most resonant place to connect. We have a Discord. I found I have a hard time logging in and looking at the Discord. Telegram is more enjoyable to me somehow, so I do that more. And I think it's roughly the same number of folks with significant overlap. But yeah, the channel's sort of not quite clear. I've done a bunch of Twitter Spaces recently. Also, I kind of like Twitter Spaces, although I think the video is sort of humanizing on YouTube, and it's harder to know what's going on in Twitter Spaces. The interface is a little clunky. I think maybe crypto likes them. So they're kind of, they got the pseudonymous ethos, but for whatever reason, I sort of prefer the YouTube format. I also find of the social media platforms, YouTube actually targets me the least toxic stuff. And there's a lot of I get good news on X/Twitter, but there's lots of rage bait. Instagram is not good for anything except keeping up with people and seeing shiny things that people are doing. Telegram I use for communities. I don't know if Telegram is really social media. So it feels like YouTube is somehow the best. YouTube comments used to be horrible, and somehow they're now civilized and constructive. I usually also get interesting, sometimes uplifting content, where it's not necessarily like that on other platforms. So YouTube for the moment. It feels like the world has also shifted very dramatically from a in essence, part of the purpose here is marketing. The world has shifted from a corporate marketing, like the company or the whatever has a message is trying to repeat, and that's handled by professionals and all that sort of thing. to a kind of direct from the individual sort of perspective. I guess the individual is me in this case, but it's just sort of remarkable the shift in, I guess, an 8 to 10 year period from like when people watched TV, and now like people watch Joe Rogan and all manner of indie creators. Of course, they still watch TV and produced content some, but it's really shifted. And I kind of think that that's sort of like part of why all founders are now on Twitter all the time, or have their own little radio show, or that sort of things. Podcast era. Like I don't actually really want too much attention, um, but it doesn't feel quite like a choice. Um, Also, I'm trying to get into like a cadence here. So I've made a bunch of content in the past. We had a series on the early days of Ethereum, which got through a good 3 or 4 episodes, which I thought were good. We got good feedback on. It was like months ago, and I haven't picked it up since. Um, I think long form is good, but that I have a tendency to be a little too perfectionist. And these things didn't take enormous prep and didn't have like high production value, but somehow I would do one and then not want to do one for a while. So I feel like the cadence, just like put the radio show on the calendar, let's say for the foreseeable future, like Wednesdays at 7 p.m. East Coast. And I'll probably keep doing it. And just try to extemporize. I did do some prep, but it was like from 6 p.m. till now, which is, nice and bounded, and, not that stressful. I was like, the radio show's happening one way or another. So I guess I got to think a little bit about what I'm going to say. It's like the same reason you have demo days at a company. You got a fixed date where you got to show something, you got to show something. If you like wait until the deliverables done and have a variable date, that day may never come. And I'll get something together because I don't want to be too embarrassed, but I'm trying to keep it, low production value for the time being. That's why I say lower your expectations in the description. In terms of topics, mostly crypto, blockchain related, a little bit about what we're doing at the company, but I think a lot about like what I observe from the broader market trends. Not exclusively crypto though. For better or for worse, I'm like kind of armchair global macro guy. Like sometimes I can't look away. We're working them heads down most of the time, but just gotta kind of see what's going on. And so if I'm going to be doing that anyway, I feel like it's a good forum to discuss some of that on like a weekly show. The excuse I give is like some of it actually really does directly affect what we do at the business. And so I allow myself a little bit of like watching what's going on. For a couple of years, I completely tuned out the news successfully. And then somehow I got pulled back in. It depends how crazy the things are that are going on. If the crazier they are, the more likely that I pay attention. I guess for obvious reasons. Maybe it should be the other way. Maybe it's like, nah. Anyway, so probably have guests sometimes. Just wanted to like get this thing off the ground, and not have a guest for the first one, but I'm sure my co-founders, crypto friends, non-crypto friends, etc., will make appearances as we go. But that takes planning, and I didn't want to do any planning, so here we are. Okay, I think I will often probably talk about topics that are kind of developing and might have happened some time ago. I think in the modern era, there's a lot of pressure to have a take immediately as like news breaks. But to understand what's going on, you kind of got to like wait and see what's going on and like see if you can extrapolate any kind of bigger trend about that. And so, I might like often be delayed on things. As a for instance, so I think it's a good time for a post-election roundup. Um, it was interesting. It was obviously super crazy on many different fronts. Crypto, I guess this is the first election where crypto really played a role. So big donors, both, crypto aligned people to the president, but also for individual congressional races. In fact, I think crypto is the single largest industry donor overall, which is through primarily the Fair Shake PAC, which is kind of remarkable, big turnaround in a short period of time. Although, yeah, I suppose Sam Bankman-Fried kind of pioneered the big crypto donations model, for worse, not better. But I guess the tactic, has worked reasonably well in better hands. Trump kind of, or close friends of Trump, sort of launched a coin. Trump came to the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. I guess as did RFK, and joined Trump at that time. Even got some pretty good, at least lip service from Democrats, also about being more crypto forward. I guess we'll have to wait and see whether that was more than lip service based on the outcome. It may really have not been. We shall see. We've got a theoretical Department of Governmental Efficiency named after maybe you could say Bitcoin was the first meme coin, but Doge being the first meme coin. It's funny. It's in the consciousness. And while polling didn't really do all that much to tell us the result of the election, Polymarket actually did. So I watched the election. There are a lot of guys who work at Citadel who have moved to Miami, where I'm right now. And I watched it at one of their places, a little election party. It's interesting to watch the election with that group of people because I guess they kind of bet on world events for a living. And so they were, at least the belief is that the markets know ahead of time often what the result of things are, because someone somewhere really smart or who has inside information is trading on that information before the rest of us get that information. And I think they were looking at one, currency pairs, like the dollar against certain other currencies, and also commodity futures. And they said, so let's say 8 p.m., that probably of the two, Trump said inflation, Harris said less inflation. I guess there was a less of a deficit forecast under Harris than Trump. And maybe that was the model. And so, they were saying that was likely to be the outcome. By the time I got there, it was maybe 8 p.m., 8 p.m., Polymarket had already started to shift in the Trump direction. And I said sort of guys, this is probably right. At this point, it looks like Trump will win. Interestingly, so I remember in 2020, there were betting markets on the election. And then 2022, also the midterms, I remember looking at the betting markets, Polymarket not being one of them. And whatever markets I was looking at then, I think no longer exists, or I think Predictit might have been one of them, and it no longer is allowed to operate or what have you. But the betting markets were wrong in 2020. It was late on election day, 80-20 Trump, and flipped to 2080 Biden by the morning. I think they were right in 2022. And both Polymarket and Kalshi, which is one of the popular ones now, that Polymarket agreed with the CFTC not to service U.S. persons. Kalshi succeeded somehow at getting the ability to service U.S. persons. They were pretty close to each other for most of the election. Polymarket, obviously crypto-based, Kalshi's not. Although I think they'll take USDC, etc. Um, but Kalshi was a little bit more in the Harris camp, maybe like a 5 point spread, but they converged over time. And so I found it very interesting. And notably, Polymarket called every state correctly. I think Kalshi probably did too. I'm not quite sure. And you saw in the course of the night that risk assets started like repricing themselves right away. So like Bitcoin went up, the stock, I guess maybe the stock market wasn't open, maybe like stock futures are up. Like everything started to move in the same direction, which was kind of interesting. Like you could ask yourself, is it that okay, Trump's going to win, then the world's going to there'll be fewer regulations, Bitcoin will be more accepted, there'll be a strategic reserve, the world will be more open, and that's why the markets are going up. But it could also be like more inflation's coming, the deficit will be bigger, the government's going to print more money later. Like in the last month or so, like 10-year treasury yields, after like dipping for a while, have like come back up. And so it could just be that, like we saw early in the pandemic, once a lot of more money is sloshing around, all sort of risk assets go up. And that's what was being priced in. Like, I think Trump is like a loose money guy to some extent. I think he has complained at some point when we had 2% interest rates that there should be zero. And so I don't really know. Like, I sort of think if the Department of Government Efficiency is really going to work, then you wouldn't see inflation. You would see, the generally like prices would fall and the dollar would actually like probably like strengthen against things like Bitcoin. Although I guess if the treasury or whatever buys up a whole bunch of Bitcoin, that would create upwards price pressure for obvious reasons. And I guess the question is like, is the world telling us that it's a new day for crypto? That like, the hostility of the apparatus, Operation Choke Point 2.0, just the SEC, all of that. Is that going to be over? And that's what the market's telling us, or will it be more of the same? Of course, I think probably like somewhere in between. In reality, I watched the Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz do actually pretty good podcasts. I do like they're quite thoughtful, obviously, and they, I guess Andreessen in particular, he seemed like really seriously relieved, like a boot on the neck of his portfolio companies had been lifted, and it was the dawn of a new day. And like a couple days later, the FBI raided, the Polymarket CEO's residence and like took his phone and computers. And, it's just like there are always lots of SEC enforcement actions, but I think a lot of them, I guess they're like nearing the end of the fiscal. It feels like it's ratcheted up almost. You see like one a day, et cetera. And you wonder, like, are they, is there going to be big institutional change in terms of attitude? Because you'd imagine, like, just based on behavior that you've seen, like, is this top-down policy, or is it like you've got, rank and file at these organizations that also are, have a certain view of the world and are moving along in that direction? I mean, a little more on the FBI. I guess this was like maybe a month old news, 5-6 weeks. They went to the lengths of like creating their own kind of non-compliant, if you will, cryptocurrency so that they could catch some of the market makers out there. And I think these market makers seem sketchy, like bad actors to me. So I'm not saying that goal is necessarily wrong, but it's like a big step. It was like almost like an intelligence operation that they went through to get these people. I think they engaged their market making services, which included things like price targeting, and they charged them later. So like in one sense, they seem capable. I mean, they also like I guess they raided the president elect at some point. Like the I imagine these institutions have a lot of I don't know. I don't know that they turn on the dime, basically. It's very strange for me to be watching and like caring about the appointments of who's the new head of various regulatory agencies. Seems like Gary Gensler is going to go. Crypto people as a group do not like Gary Gensler. Um, I don't know that I like Gary Gensler. It feels. I wish that there's like plenty of fraud to go around in the crypto space, and it didn't feel that that was necessarily the focus. It was part of the focus, but there are also um, many enforcement actions that seem to be about, like registration requirements, like that, there wasn't obvious harm done to anybody yet, so to speak. Um, uh, and I guess what I mean by that is like well-intentioned people who lost their money because someone lied to them. Like obviously, like that should not be allowed. Um, but and in terms of like the choice of the things the SEC has gone after, it seems like it probably could have been better. There's plenty of big fish to go after. Like like then they were in good discussions with FTX before all of the news broke there, and then I think they layered on some charges later or something. Um, but yeah, so one wonders again: is this like a top down thing that you could fix by appointing new people, or is it an institutional attitude that will require sort of total turnover to, which I don't think we'll see. I think I it will be interesting to watch, but I don't expect seismic change in the next 4 years. Uh, I also one of the things that's been funny to me is like some of the cartoon characters that have appeared in the election. I looked at the guy's name, the Union guy, who's like, "I will end you," in reference to the port strike and like their demands for like very large pay interests. His name's Harold Daggett, I believe. I think he had there's like a racketeering charge that he faced in the past. I think he beat it, but I think of him and Tom Homan as like kind of similar characters, obviously coming from a different side of things, but sort of kind of like outlandish, uh, loud kind of alpha guys. It's been entertaining for me. So I like to work more than I like to watch these things, but I watch these things a little too much, so I may as well like share with everybody. But yeah, I mean, so I think it will be better, but not in the way people are hoping, probably. That's my guess. My guess is like the institutional inertia is so big that it's not just going to be like overnight the government is supportive of everything crypto and will make clear rules for it and go after the bad guys and not the good guys and whatnot. I think you'll see a mix of things. All right. My other segment is fitness related. So I was always like a pretty good athlete growing up, to the extent that I was like a good, uh, pretty good high school football player, decent high school baseball player, and actually played football in college, was not good at that level. And then I took sort of a long hiatus from sports, having graduated, then gone off to grad school, and then started this business, at Block Apps. I sort of got into a mode of like working all the time, which I guess I was before, but started to kind of like having lost the sort of structure of, um, imposed fitness. It took a while to kind of get back into the groove. And I really started to do so maybe 2019, I'd say mid late 2019. Um, and I've gotten into sprinting. Um, Sprinting is good. Well, track is good in general for adults who want to be involved in a competitive activity. Like you can't get a, it's hard to get an adult football team together. You definitely can't get a tackle football team together. It's like 11 players at a minimum on both teams, really more like 20 plus players on both teams, lots of insurance. Your joints are not good enough for it anymore. There's more basketball. I was never that good a basketball player. I just, kind of didn't play enough as a kid. Softball I play sometimes, but so it's good also in that um, there's a number that tells you like what kind of general fitness you're in, how old you're getting. I'm still getting at least adult life faster. I didn't have too many formal times taken when I was younger, so I'm not really sure how I compared to then. I was probably faster when I was like 21 than now, but there's still progress, and um, so I encourage it as an activity. Um, Kind of a it's a mix of a talent game and a longevity game. Where on the one end you've got young guys like I said, if you show up to a track meet, some of them like the college meets will usually let anyone run if they're not huge meets, uh, and so you'll have like young fast guys who are still in college, and then actually people who are 10, 15, 20 years older than me tend to have been really talented if they're still in it because they're still pretty fast. And then there's like some, I feel like people in my age range are sometimes like looking for an activity and not super talented but still in that kind of youngish like intense fitness phase of their life. And a thing I've learned lately, and I've learned this lesson. Well, no, I haven't learned the lesson, but like many times in my um, athletic history, I've been reminded that a lot of the problem you get when you're trying to be serious about something is you're trying to do too much too quickly. And I think personally, like part of this comes from like, like the football culture is very much like all go all the time. You hit people really hard. You're supposed to lift really heavy weights in the off season. There's running, lots of running. It's pretty maximal within the sport. Lots of yelling, you know, and a lot of machismo. And also, if you were like looking for so like I started to lift weights maybe my senior year before my senior year in high school, and at the time like you would get weightlifting advice from the internet, and it was also like it was very much in the all intensity all the time. Better lift heavy. If you're going to do cardio, you better do really hard intervals till you puke. You can't, don't do any of that jogging stuff. Jogging is for soft people. um, and I kind of like that attitude, but especially like as I'm trying to like be a sprinter for maybe another 20, 30, 40 years, you kind of gotta be a little easier on yourself if longevity is the goal. I find that I could be about as strong as I used to be and still quite fast, but like the tendons in the joints don't bounce back quite like they used to. And I think this is yeah. So I suspect a lot of people who like did a lot of athletic activity in the like '90s to mid to late 2000s have this idea in their head that they like got to go hard all the time. And I would encourage you know people who want to make it last to not do so. One of the changes in the zeitgeist you see is like you may hear all the time about zone 2 cardio these days, and actually the distance runners knew about this long before there was a lot of scientific research. It's sort of that basically what you should do is you should do a lot of stuff that's not very intense most of the time to build up your tolerance to occasionally do intense stuff. And so this, like, they call it base building. To distance runners are, first they just jog a ton, and they like progressively increase the amount they jog. They've got rules like never increase more than 10% the amount of miles you ran week over week. And it's very sensible, right? It's so the body can adapt to anything. It just cannot adapt to anything super fast. If you just like double what you're doing overnight, or run way faster or lift way heavier, that's like when you tend to get hurt, and also when you tend to like burn out on things. So I've had different experiments in the last few years, and I always make this mistake because like I greatly increased my step count at some point, which was excellent, like on balance. But I went from like 10,000 to 20,000. Like I probably didn't need to increase it that much. I'm at like a 15 right now. And I discovered recently, so like by resting heart rate, kind of in excellent shape, like usually sub 50 if I'm reasonably well rested. But um, I found that if you go by the zone 2 criteria, I can't even really jog in zone 2. And like again, like I'm in good shape for intense intermittent activity. Um, Zone 2, so let's say for argument's sake, for me that's like between 120 and 145 beats per minute heart rate. And it's I can do that for about, the slowest I can jog is about 4.5 miles per hour. I've tested this, and below that it's like a walk. And I can maybe 2.5 minutes, but then past that, it's the heart rate starts rising um, beyond the threshold. And sort of what that says is like the body is telling me that there's this level of activity I can handle and can measure it very clearly. And if I had just spent some time running slowly for a while, I think I would have had sort of less joint issues overall. Also, like the zone 2 stuff is making me feel great, and I do mix in very intense stuff as well. Um, but I find like my day to day energy is much more even. So the walking was great at first, but then I realized I probably needed to up the intensity some. Yeah, up it just a little bit, like 4.5 mile per hour jog is almost a walk, but it's not. And there's more benefits there still. So, for younger folks who are thinking about long-term fitness strategy, for older folks thinking about getting back into it, point is ease into it. Easier than you think. Just get some consistency down. And I keep breaking this rule, but I'm trying to get better at it. This go around. I think with that, probably good enough for the first session. We're here at 33 minutes. I'm sure there are more things I could say, but are there more things I need to say? Probably not. I hope I did see some people did join this. I'm sure they're Blockap's employees or fans. I hope people enjoy this segment, and I intend to just keep doing more, kind of whether people appear or not, but we shall see. So optimistically, see you next Wednesday. Thanks, everybody.